Well, I'm excited to be here, excited to work with you guys. I'm really passionate about coaches' mentorship and just providing resources. The biggest thing that I want you guys to get out of today is more so like inspiration. We're going to show you a lot of drills. You're going to have access to over 1,000 videos on our app, and I don't want you to feel like held hostage by these videos. Like I need to do exactly what's here. I want it to inspire you to be creative. You might see a drill or a video and go, okay, I really like this. I want to do that. And you might see another one and say, hey, this maybe doesn't work for our group, but it inspired me to maybe try something else or kind of mold that a little bit. So I think that's the biggest goal for today is to be an inspiration that way. So I think one of the most powerful life skills is the ability to turn chaos into a teaching moment. So 5.5 years ago, my wife and I found out that she was pregnant with twin boys, which was quite a shock to us as we're about to go from a family of 2 to a family of 4. So in those 9 months, we got to figure out how we're going to prepare. And so as we're preparing, we're now painting this picture in our minds of what success is going to look like. What are the things that we're going to do to raise these boys to be kind and respectful? But also, what are we going to do when boys decide to be boys? When we have chaotic moments, how are we going to handle those moments? And so what my wife and I decided was we're going to try to use those chaotic moments and turn them into teaching moments. And so we prepared for that. We felt pretty confident going into it. Looking back, I have no idea why we felt confident going into it, because those moments that we had prepared for, they started to take shape right in front of us. And they were about 100 times more chaotic than anything we had ever imagined. And so what I had thought was going to be maybe a public meltdown at Home Depot now looked like more of a reenactment of the scene in the movie Step Brothers, where Will Ferrell's got a baseball bat and John C. Reilly's got a golf club, and mom's screaming and mom's crying and dad's screaming to put it down, and they knock each other out simultaneously. And so now as this chaos is happening, I feel like a failure because it looks nothing like what I had pictured. And so I had determined that I was going to use these moments to teach. Instead, I get in the chaos and I completely forget to teach. All I want is control. And so my kids need control, but they need to be taught. So if they're not taught, you have this continuous circle of like bad behavior, dad gets control, bad behavior, dad gets control, and it just continues on and on. And that my response to grab control is not intentional. It's just simply my response to the chaos. And I think players and coaches do the exact same thing. Players come into a workout, they come into a practice or game, and they've painted this picture of what it's going to look like, and then chaos hits. Maybe they're trying to acquire a new skill that day and they're struggling a little bit more than they thought, or they're turning the ball over when they weren't anticipating they would turn it over. Chaos hits. What's their response? We always say that failure is feedback. You can learn from that. Do players choose to try to get feedback from their mistakes, or do they panic and say, I don't like these mistakes? They step back and they just fight for control. Coaches, we also paint a picture of what we think our practices or our game is going to look like, and then chaos hits. Players start turning it over. We're like, we've worked on this before. They're taking bad shots. Like, no, we've coached this before. We got to understand the players are going through the chaos, trying to figure it out at the same time that we are. And so what is our response to the chaos? I think oftentimes we view the game of basketball in our heads like we would view flex. They go from point A to point B to point C. It's clean, it's crisp. When in my eyes, I think basketball is like 10 knuckleheads running around on the floor at the same time. We use inefficient forms of communication like code words and hand signals. It's mass chaos. And so when the chaos happens in like a practice setting, we have this conversation in our head that's like, well, this isn't good. And if it's not good, then it's bad. And if it's bad, then we're not getting better. I need control. And so what ends up happening is we try to remove the chaos from our practice setting. So I want to go back to my twins for a second. When they're about 12 to 14 months old, they're learning to walk. And it's not really walking. It's kind of like we get our foot under our hip and then one time and then we face plant. And so their teachers said something to my wife that really stuck with me. Said, Jackson is a much better walker than Jameson. He's smoother. He's more coordinated. He has way better balance. Jameson is my Bam Bam. He's herky-jerky, face plants, whatever. But they said Jackson will not let go of the wall or the couch or whatever's in front of him. We think he can walk without help, but he doesn't believe it yet. So he's very passive. Jameson goes through this cycle of 2 steps, face plant, belly laugh, get up, do it again and again and again. He's far less talented than his brother is, and yet he figured out how to walk way before his brother did. And so the same is true in a basketball sense, where the players that are willing to fail the fastest are oftentimes the players that are going to figure things out the quickest. The kicker is, if our players know how much we as coaches hate mistakes, they're never going to be courageous enough to go make one. So I want to be clear when it comes to mistakes. There's a couple different types of mistakes. Mistakes made due to lack of effort or not paying attention are completely unacceptable. And we need to hold our players accountable to that from day one of practice. We're not going to have mistakes based on you not trying or you not being locked in. But at the same time, as players are trying to solve problems, they need to be given permission to go make mistakes. So I use this analogy. I think it's kind of goofy, but it works well. So I'll tell a group of guys that are being really passive. I'll say, hey, fellas, I want you to imagine this. You see a really pretty girl, and you want to go get her phone number. You got 2 choices. Number 1, you walk over there, you're smooth, you're trying to be confident, you're acting as if you've already accomplished the task of getting the number. Or you walk over there going, don't say something stupid, don't say something stupid. Well, if you have that mindset, you're going to say something stupid, right? And so from a basketball sense, it's very important that we cultivate the attitude of our players as they approach some of this chaos. Do we want players that are confident, saying, I'm going to go make a play, or do we have players that their whole mindset is based off the fact that my coach doesn't like mistakes, so now they're out there passive, they're hesitant because they're just trying to avoid mistakes, right? And so I think that analogy is goofy, but I think it sticks. We want our players out there confident. If you have a player that's getting pressed in the full court, we want that player thinking, hey, I'm going to go make a play. I'm confident. We don't want that player going, don't turn it over, don't turn it over, don't turn it over, right? And so the best players are the best problem solvers. So I want you to think about this, that players are going to have to solve problems differently. As a tall and athletic wing is going to be able to do different things around the rim than maybe the smallest player on the floor. You're also going to have players that are similar size. They're going to be forced to do things differently. The best example I can think of this is, it would be really silly for me to expect someone like Luka Doncic to solve problems the way that LeBron James does. Even though they're about the same size, Luka's physically disqualified from doing many of the things that LeBron does. He's not explosive like LeBron. He's physical, but he doesn't have that burst. He can't play above the rim. Yet Luka's one of the best players in the world because he understands how to solve problems. So you solve problems based on your size, your skill, your athleticism, things like that. But we would say that the best players are the best problem solvers, and the best problem solvers are the best decision makers. So Luka Doncic is an unbelievable decision maker, and in my belief, I think that decision making is a skill. So if you want to become a better shooter or a better ball handler or finisher, you would spend a considerable amount of time repping those things out. Want to be a great shooter? I got to spend a lot of time shooting the basketball. You want to be a great decision maker? You need to put yourself in situations where you're forced to make decisions and you're forced to make them quickly. I think one of the biggest issues we see in youth basketball is that players will do the right thing, they'll create an advantage, they'll pass the ball, and then the next player that catches the ball is unable to make a quick decision and the defense just resets. So we got to be able to get players to be able to make quick decisions so that we can keep those advantages. Now again, anytime you try to learn a new skill, you're generally not very good at it. Leads to mistakes. So in our effort to get players to become better decision makers, we need to understand that mistakes are going to happen, and we need to have them confident enough to be able to go make a mistake and then learn from it. So there's 3 types of decisions that I think it's really important for us to understand. So the first one is good decisions. The second one is bad decisions. And the third one, which is the worst, is indecision. So if you have a player that makes a good decision, we want to be able to talk through that. Hey, that was great. How do we get you in a spot where you can do that again? player makes a bad decision. Okay, let's talk about what you did, and let's maybe come up with another solution to the problem so that you can adjust. A player that's indecisive and doesn't make a decision, like that's the hardest thing for us to coach. So we would say that a spoken truth is temporary, but a discovered truth is permanent. So I'll say that again. A spoken truth is temporary. A discovered truth is permanent. As coaches, we're often speaking in spoken truths. Hey, I want you to do this. I want you to do this. The discovered truth is like the light bulb moment. So an example of this would be my son, one of my twins at 2 years old. Hey, J-Mo, you can't jump off the couch head first. You're going to get hurt. He says, okay, Daddy. He sits down. Well, 5 minutes later, I have to remind him of this. And then a half an hour later, I have to remind him. Like, he's aware of it when I say it, but it's a spoken truth. The discovered truth is when he flips off the back of the couch and lands on his head. Now he's crying. Well, guess how many times he's done that since? 0, because he had his discovery moment. So for coaches, we need to get our players to have those discovery moments. So when players are indecisive, we're not able, the only thing that we're able to do is coach through spoken truths. They didn't do anything. So you're like, well, you maybe would have done this, and then the defense would have, like, players don't learn like that. Most players don't learn well that way. So we would say that it is better for players to make a quick decision and be wrong than it is to not make a decision at all, because it at least allows for the discovery moments to happen. A lot of times the discovery moments happen through failure. Sometimes they happen through success. But a lot of times players are figuring out what not to do. And once they learn what not to do, that's going to help them adjust and find a different solution until ultimately they start having success. So good decision, bad decision, and indecision. And last thing is this. We're going to get to the court in a couple minutes, so if you guys want to start getting loose in the hallway, or if you guys are ready to rock it, you guys are young. Your muscles are always loose. My mindset towards player development is I try my best to not speak in absolutes. Like, this is right and this is wrong. I try to speak towards what's effective and what's not. And so the funny thing about basketball is I might tell a player, don't do that. And then the next time down the floor, what I just told them not to do is the way that they solved the problem. So I want each decision or each situation to have a decision involved. So we keep talking about decision making. We need players to be able to make decisions on how do they solve that problem. Again, if I have a 6'6" player that gets to the block, they're going to be able to do things differently than someone that's smaller. That person that's smaller might have to solve that problem differently. So when I speak in absolutes, when we get to this spot on the floor, this is what we do. Yeah, one player might have some success, but the other one might struggle due to their differing physical attributes. So last week, we're at Benilde St. Margaret's working with the girls team. They've won 3 consecutive state titles. They have one of the best point guards in the state. So she comes off a ball screen, and she gets to the right side of the rim, 2 feet inside the paint. She jumps, and I'm like, yeah, she got a layup. And for some reason, she kicks the ball to the left corner. And I stop. I'm like, Liv, that's a layup. She turns around, and she was great. She's like, well, they rotated over, and this is what happened, yada, yada. So we explain it. 2 possessions later, similar situation happens. She gets 2 feet in the paint. She jumps up. She gets blocked. She turns around with a big smile on her face, and she goes, see? I said, hold up, kid. Let's bring everybody in. I said, let's talk about the first situation. You had a shooter in the corner, a perimeter player, which meant they had a shorter defender who was also hugging to the corner, which means she got here late and she was smaller. That's a layup. I said, who was in the corner that last time? She goes, my 5, my big, a non-shooter with a taller defender who was closer and got there early. So you're looking at it from an absolute standpoint of when I get here, this is what I do. And those situations look very similar, but in reality, they're completely different and require a completely different decision to be made. And I loved that situation happened because it was one of the best teaching moments that we've had all fall. And it happened because she screwed up twice. So the player's like, oh, I get it. I said, you get here, you have to make a decision every single time. This is not, this is right and this is wrong. This is what's going to be effective given the circumstances that I have right now. So I've worked with Paige Beckers for the last 6 years, and somebody can fact check this for me, but I saw on Twitter when she won National Player of the Year as a freshman, she was the first female college athlete to do that as a freshman. She took 5 shots the whole year with her left hand. 5. Now you could argue that there were plenty of situations where she probably should have finished with her left hand, but I can't imagine Gino Auriemma yelling at her, "I wish you wouldn't have made that layup with your right hand, and you would have finished the other way." It becomes about what's effective and what's not. Now, at the youth levels, that's not an excuse for right-handed players to never use their left hand. I think Paige is unbelievable with her left hand. She's just more comfortable with her right hand, like most players would be with their dominant hand. So I don't want that example to be like, hey, we don't need kids to do this or do that, but we need to learn what's effective and what's not. Tim Duncan is known as one of the most fundamental players in NBA history. And if he would catch the ball here, he would turn, and you would anticipate that he would shoot it with his left hand. Well, that defender would stick his right hand here. You watch film, Tim Duncan would turn here and shoot it with his right hand right over the top. This is one of the best players in NBA history, and he would do something that would be considered wrong, but he's like, wait a minute, why would I fight this big going away from the basket with my offhand when I can just square my elbow and finish? So it's not about what's right and what's wrong, it's about what's effective and what's not. Different things are going to be effective for different players. So I want to cover a couple like basketball myths before we get to on-court stuff. Ball handling. And when I say these, I am guilty of teaching all of these, okay? Dribble below your knee. Doesn't happen. There are moments in the game where I got to get to a low crossover to protect, or maybe I'm splitting a double team, but otherwise the ball's at your hip. So I hear coaches all the time, dribble below your knee, dribble below your knee. No one has dribbled below their knee since Bob Cousy, right? The ball is at your hip or slightly above. So when we're teaching players skills, there are a lot of times where I would say, I'd rather that ball be too high than too low. I'll see so many youth coaches, one of the things we get every single year, hey, coach, can you help my player? Their dribble's too high. And I'll go watch them, and I'm like, I actually think they should let the ball lift a little bit higher. And you watch the coach's head like explode. And it's like, no, we need to be able to play fast, and this ball needs to be able to lift to our hip. So dribble below your knee. Let's be cautious on how we communicate that to players, because I think it causes a little bit of confusion. Footwork. I hear so many coaches say, hey, this player's right-handed, they should stop left-right. That's a great habit. It's a great habit. But a good habit is a bad habit when it's your only habit. So a good habit is a bad habit when it's your only habit. So left-right is a great habit. But what if I'm going the other way? Now I'm right, left, right. It's not wrong, but it's not as efficient. So I would encourage players to be able to stop left, right, left, and be able to hop. The excuse we get most of the time is, well, I'm a right-handed shooter. I said, okay, let's just play a little math game here for a second. Let's say you get 10 shots in a game. Okay? 10 shots in a game. You're going to get a couple layups in there, and you're going to get a couple catch and shoots. So let's just say you get 5 pull-up jumpers. You have to stop hundreds of times during a game. And only 5 of them involve a shot. So I would say that making sure we have one set of footwork based on the fact that we shoot with a certain hand when it only includes 5% of our stops, I think can be a little silly. When you word it that way, it's like, okay, we need to have the ability to stop left, right, left. We have to have control of our feet to solve whatever problem is in front of us. So I think we need to encourage multiple habits there. Shooting, there's a ton of different ways that you can shoot the basketball. I think every single great shooter does something that a shooting coach would cringe at. Ray Allen dipped that thing below his waist. I'm like, oh, Ray Allen shot that thing pretty well. I've coached a guy at Minnesota State Moorhead that once made like 317 threes in the corner without missing 2 in a row. And he'd shoot that thing open. You'd look at that and you're like, man, that's kind of goofy. So a lot of coaches will say, square your feet. And say, why? He said, well, square your feet so you can square your elbow. To which I would say, why don't you just square your elbow? Klay Thompson is slightly open, but he's here. The way his body is designed, it allows his elbow and his palm to be to the rim. Steph Curry is much more opened here. If you told Steph Curry to square his feet, you're going to do this, and his elbow is going to go that way. So if we can get our elbow to the rim, we have a good chance to be able to put that ball at least straight going to the basket. So primary would be getting your elbow to the rim. Second, your feet, your hips, your shoulders. They're important, but they would be secondary. Passing. See a lot of this chest pass. It's a fundamental pass. Okay, that happens sometimes on ball reversals with not a lot of pressure, and maybe outlet passes after we've given up a layup. Majority of the time when we make a pass, I have a defender that's in front of me, which is now going to require me to pass the ball outside of my frame, outside of my shoulders. So many of the passing drills that I see at the youth level are here, and then we get in a game and we're required to do this and pivot and reach, and we haven't spent a whole lot of time doing it, and we struggle with it. So we got to be able to get players to pass outside of their frame. And then the last one before we get to, actually two more before we get to the rim, finishing. So we teach players to jump just like this on the right side of the rim, and this is not wrong by any means, but do you know why we teach it with the ball by our ear? It's because when they first start playing basketball, they're in third grade and they weigh 37 pounds, and that's the only way they're strong enough to get the ball to the rim. So I can have a player whose head does not go above my shoulder, and I can stand like this, and they're right next to me, they can block that shot. So if the ball is close to my body and the defender is close to my body, they have access to the basketball. So we have to be able to get this basketball extended away. A simple exercise that I would do with players is have them hold the basketball here. This is the strongest position you're going to be in. You have very limited control, and if I were to come here, the only way that I can score it is if I turn my shoulders. Well, the defender's right there. That's a block shot. If I'm out here, I'm not as strong, but man, do I have a ton of ability to control and manipulate this basketball. So it's not about maximum strength. As soon as we have the ability to finish out here, we got to get players doing that. Okay, so we'd have three types of finishes. You have your underhand finish, defender more on my backside. If they're to the side, we would go more of a side hand finish. And then our overhand finish is a floater or a dunk. So unless somebody surprises me, we can just call it a floater. So we want to be able to get that basketball extended away. We got to be able to control and manipulate it. There's one more thing with finishing that I think we do that screws up a player's timing. We spend a lot of time on timing. You're going to see stuff on the app. Dribble step timing is super important. You will see a player that has never played basketball before, so they have no habits. And they will run, and they will get to here, and they will jump off their right foot and finish with their right hand. And coaches go, no, you can't do that. I would say, why not? Because if they're right here and they're going to jump off of one foot, why would they do this and not cover any ground? We call that a bicycle step. So if you're going to play off of one foot, it's a race to the rim. I want to get there in the least amount of steps, the least amount of dribbles. Why would I take that extra step? I should just jump. So I have the ability to jump here. I have the ability to jump here. You look at the NBA, you look at college, you look at high school, and you even look at youth. The players that are able to play fast, they jump like this all the time. They're always jumping like this because it doesn't matter what foot you jump off of. What matters is where you jump from. So the other thing is, if they're right here and their right foot hits and they take one more step, they're now underneath the basket, which then forces them to bring the ball back to their ear hole, which then causes a lot of block shots. So it's less about what foot they jump off of and more about where they jump from. Okay, 3 shooting concepts. We're going to go back to that for just a second, and then we're going to get the guys on the floor. You guys ready to rock and roll? You sure? Okay, so we just very basic. Say elbow squared when we shoot it. Second one is elbow locked. I want to lock my elbow out for consistency. So if I don't lock my elbow out, sometimes I will extend to here, sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm here. That's a variable that we can eliminate by simply locking out every single time. So elbow squared, elbow locked, and then the last one is elbow above eye. So ESPN did a really interesting sports science about 11 years ago on Steph Curry versus LeBron James. Now, Steph has a much higher arc on his jump shot. And so an exercise that I do with kids is I'll have them make a hoop and hold it at their belly button. They look down so you can see the entire rim. If you hold it out here in front of your nose, you can't see the front third of the rim. You can only see the back third. So when Steph shoots the basketball and it comes up and down, he has access to the entire rim. So he can be short and it can finish on the inside part of that rim or the front part of that rim. When LeBron shoots at more of a flat angle, he doesn't have access to that front part of the rim. So what they found in the study is that Steph Curry has access to like 27% more surface area on the rim than LeBron does. Well, if we're playing darts and your bullseye is 27% bigger than mine, you're likely going to hit the bullseye more times than I am because your target is bigger. So when we get this ball up, what we're doing is we're literally opening up our target. We're making that rim bigger. So it's elbow squared, elbow locked, and then we want to be able to look elbow above eye, because if I finish here, I'm pushing the ball out rather than up. With the really little tykes, we would say, we want to shoot rainbows, not rockets. Get that thing extended up.